Merry Christmas and happy holidays to all of those who celebrate week 1 of the NFL season. Commissioner Goodell has blessed us with a 4-day opening week for this NFL season. And after the Sunday slate of games, I'm gonna be coming on here and talking about some of my major takeaways and storylines that I find interesting going into that you may have missed, or things that I want you to watch for going into week 2. Also hoping that we can get some conversation going in the comments in the Mish Monster Sports community once that officially is announced. I promise it's coming. And I just want to start off by talking about how this is probably the sloppiest opening weekend that I've seen of NFL football in recent memory. It's really interesting, besides the Brazil game, right, where that field should have probably not even been played on. Pretty despicable for the league to put those guys out there in those conditions in prime time and not feel like they're gonna get some slack from fans who felt like that was pretty frustrating. But also, if you're a fan of either the Eagles or the Packers, probably pretty nerve-wracking, especially when these guys don't play a ton in the preseason. To come out and that to be their opening game, I don't think that's a great reflection of the league, and at times why you can see they get the reputation for being money hungry at the expense of player safety. The major storylines and takeaways from week 1, first off, is the fact that you can win a Super Bowl with Baker Mayfield. I don't care what position he got drafted at, whether you like it or not, this guy can play. No, he's not in a position to play hero ball, and he doesn't have the physical skill set to go into a franchise and flip it around. You can argue with me about if you feel like he did that with Cleveland or not. He obviously had some pretty crazy circumstances there, but within the confines of this offense, the Buccaneers have put him in a prime position to exploit all of the gifts that he does have, which are obviously his competitiveness, his leadership, his world-class accuracy, which we saw dip a ton in Cleveland. So I don't think there's any questions right now for Buccaneer fans or for other folks who are still calling the Atlanta Falcons after that abysmal performance against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I don't think a lot of people had very high expectations for going into this season. I mean, kind of a fringe playoff team. They brought in marquee signings of Russell Wilson on a veteran minimum contract. Justin Fields really is expecting him to turn his career around or to turn, Pittsburgh's offense around. And so they go into Atlanta's building and make a statement. As far as I'm concerned, it reminds me of the fact that, well, there's two things. First thing is the fact that I'm going to be right on this NFC South Tampa Bay Buccaneer thing. I don't really care what the Saints came out and looked like. And now we have confirmation about what the Carolina Panthers look like, or what they're going to look like. That operation that still has David Tepper written all over it. Anyway, with Steelers, they looked pretty good. They looked elite on defense, which we know they're always going to have. Even with Justin Fields, right now we don't know if he's made a ton of improvements. What we do know is that when he has support around him and he has protection, it's easy for him to sit back in the pocket and see the field, when that was my biggest criticism of him in Chicago. Now let's pivot to a conversation that everybody on social media seems to be having about Brady and his poor start in the booth. My first question ultimately is, who thought that he was going to be good at this? Yeah, of course. I mean, the guy's got a wealth of knowledge, right? Best quarterback ever until probably Patrick Mahomes is finished. And so conventional wisdom would probably tell people, hey, listen, this is a guy who is going to be able to articulate everything that's running in his brain about the game, and it's going to make the viewer so much smarter. My criticism of the deal was two things. Number one, it felt like that $300 million something contract was a power grab, right? He saw an opportunity to get paid, which I can never fault anybody for, but it also felt like a guy who's played football for 40 years and needed to have the security of staying in football after he retired. Tom Brady doesn't strike me as somebody who cannot be working. So it's a natural progression for him. It's a natural progression for Fox, who think that Brady's going to drive their casual viewers to a TV. So I can't hate on it from a business side of things. But Brady isn't known for his personality. He never has been. If anything, he might be one of the more boring guys at the podium for his 20-something years that he was in the league. Brady's got a brand. He's corporate, he's professional, and he's always taken the high road. There's no edge to him. One of the things you like about Troy Aikman at times is that he will be critical of the Cowboys live in a primetime game that he knows Jerry is probably watching. Or Chris Collinsworth will completely obliterate officiating and double down on it throughout the game. You're not going to get that with Brady. What you're going to get with Brady is buttoned up. All the things that you saw him saying in press conferences, right? Like, it was a sneak peek into his broadcasting career. And how difficult is it to be the best in the history of something and then try to pivot into something that is completely different that you haven't been doing for 40 years? And Brady's also not Peyton Manning. He's not Eli. He doesn't have a great sense of humor. And any edge that he has is really kind of that Psycho Tom moment. He's yelling at the offensive line or is screaming, banging on his helmet, LFG before the game starts. But you're not gonna get that in the booth. I think it's fair to call for justice for Greg Olsen. This all kind of comes back to my NFC South predictions, where Kirk Cousins looked a complete wreck. He was already a very immobile quarterback, but he looked extremely immobile, more so than we're used to seeing. I mean, the guy was kind of taking some ginger steps in the pocket, which tells me that ultimately he is not in a position where he's feeling super great with contact and somebody landing at his feet. He probably needs to go and get a couple of hits in the lower body before he's gonna feel comfortable. But I mean, you didn't really see the ball flying off his arm like you do typically with him. There's one thing Kirk is good at, it is pushing the ball down the field and getting it to weapons. And you did not see that today with the Atlanta Falcons. And if they would have come out and made some drop balls, some bad penalties, they were some of the top culprits for just poor, sloppy play that I'm talking about. I don't think there was a ton of encouraging signs there for Atlanta. And I think people who predicted this team to be a 13-win team are going to eat their words sooner rather than later. We know the Steelers defense is good, but do we think the Steelers defense is the best defense in the way that they looked today against Atlanta? TJ Watt is a wrecking ball, we know that. But I mean, multiple guys getting home, which brings in a lot of questions about where Atlanta's offensive line is going to be in the rankings and really just overall performance, right? Because now you've got an aging quarterback coming off of this injury where it is very obvious to me. I was not one of the people who had major concerns about him just sitting in the pocket, behind one of the better offensive lines in the league in a dome, some of the best skill players in the entire NFL. So I think for him to be coming out and making 2-step drops and sitting immobile and just kind of bouncing up and down, I mean, I didn't really see him on the balls with his feet staying active. That didn't look good. He didn't look confident. He looked off. I mean, the storylines for what we're going to get from Atlanta, I just think it's going to go downhill quickly. And I think Kirk is going to be out of there. I don't necessarily think that that's a reflection solely on Kirk. I think it's a reflection of the organization prying a guy from Minnesota after an injury, after believing in him for 5+ years, fully guaranteed contracts, bringing him to Atlanta, making him think he's the guy, going to finish his career there. Brings his whole family out, picks Atlanta because his wife is from there, her parents live there. Go and you draft Michael Penix, and not even the owner sees it coming. I mean, it's just a recipe for disaster, and it actually looked worse than I thought. Of course, would love to hear your feedback if you feel like it was as egregious as I thought it was. Next, let's talk about some teams that everybody was crowning before the season, and in week 1 will hopefully pull back quite a bit, and that's the Atlanta Falcons and the Denver Broncos. Look, Bo Nix, he had a rough start. He played like a rookie QB, and Sean Payton's offense didn't look special, which I've been telling you for years that it's not. All rookie QBs today looked uncomfortable with the speed of the defensive linemen and what it takes to even throw the ball away without getting completely annihilated. Caleb looked overwhelmed in the first half, and Bo Nix looked overwhelmed the entire game. There's a reason that these guys go in the order that they go in. I don't think we need to be overly critical of Bo Nix, but I will stand on and pound on the table telling you that Sean Payton ain't nothing special, and that guy's ego always gets him into trouble. So it'll be interesting to see how that thing plays out. Denver's gonna have some growing pains, just like I thought. Other things that kind of stood out to me were some positive things, right? Out west. First thing is the Cardinals. Listen, I understand they lost, but listen, they look pretty good. There were times when you watch them the last couple of seasons where it's hard to watch. It's, oh my God, you want to turn the TV off. It's so bad. You see Kyler Murray running around for his life, not in a good way. And so today, he looked poised. He looked confident. He was making great decisions. You can still see he struggles to see over the offensive line, which is kind of hilarious when you watch it. But still, the dude moves better than some of these running quarterbacks. And one of the things I've liked about Kyler, always have, is that he moves really, really well in the context of the pocket, right? He buys time in a way that Russell Wilson used to do, not just looking, like a Jaden Daniels or like a Lamar, who understand that their running ability is extremely special and can get them out of trouble at any time. Not saying that Lamar is not a legitimate passer. I'm just saying that Kyler Murray, the way he operates today, he looked extremely special. So I think seems like the Cardinals and the Seahawks are going to put together something. The Seahawks always somehow have a better defense than you probably thought. And Mike McDonald seems to have them in a pretty good position. Still running the football a ton. So we'll see how things start to kind of unfold out there in the NFC West. It'll be interesting to see how the Rams show up, as well as how 49ers show up tomorrow. Other encouraging things. Listen, Jim Harbaugh is who we thought he was. That team was running the ball. They've got a bruiser in J.K. Dobbins. Fingers crossed that he can stay healthy, because he is special when he does. I mean, his center of gravity is crazy. He's built like a freaking fridge. And I mean, he can move, man. So he's got all the measurables you'd want from the traditional, really good NFL running backs of the last 10 to 15 years. And so let's hope that he can put it all together this season, because Jim Harbaugh is clearly going to run him into the ground. And the last thing for my Buccaneer fans, the concerns about our running game after today, those concerns are going to evaporate very quickly. Liam Cohen put on a masterclass today, and Washington's defensive line was getting a ton of internal pressure. Deron Payne is no scrub, and Rachaad White looked dynamic. He needs to be in the conversation for one of the top running backs in this league. The dude can also catch it and was ranked number 3 in receiving last year for running backs. I mean, I just only see things getting better moving forward. I love, and this is why I said you can win a Super Bowl with Baker. If you want Baker to go in to Houston last year when nobody knew what they were, you want him to go into Carolina like they asked him to do 2 years ago. You saw how that turned out. Baker doesn't need to be CJ Stroud or Josh Allen. Baker needs to throw it up to the best wide receiver duo on the outside in the last half decade, to Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. And the Buccaneers are going to be just fine. They got extremely young and fast on defense. You see the young draft picks. If they're not strip sacking, then the linebackers like Saracia Dennis is covering really well in space, which is going to continue to give Todd Bowles the versatility that he needs to continue being elite. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it unfolds. And I hope you are too. If you like what we covered today, or there's other takeaways that you want me to talk about, potentially in a midweek live stream, let me know. Let's start a conversation in the comments. Hit the subscribe, because I promise you, I am going to always cut through the noise, and I'm going to give you the hard-hitting truth that you can hopefully set your watch to. Because right now, there's a couple of things I had in my crystal ball that I hope you're keeping track of, because I know I am, and I will absolutely call out the things that I get wrong as the season continues. That's what you're always going to get with me. Appreciate you stopping by. I will see you next time.